The sun had long disappeared behind the rolling hills of Nyaga village, casting a deep blue hue over the land. The wind whispered to the tall Baobab trees, carrying with it ancient stories and forgotten secrets. Zuba sat outside her grandmother's hut, staring at the enormous tree that stood at the heart of the village. It was unlike any other tree in Nyaga. It was massive. Its thick roots twisted like the fingers of an old man, and its bark was covered in strange symbols no one could explain. The villagers never spoke of it except in hushed tones, and children were warned never to go near it. It is cursed, Mama Asha would always say, a place of lost souls. But that night, something strange happened. A soft glow pulsed from the tree's hollow. Zuba narrowed her eyes. Had she imagined it? She turned to call for her grandmother, but the old woman had already gone to bed. The hut was silent, the only sound being the distant hoot of an owl. Curiosity gnawed at Zuba. She had always been different from the other children in the village. While they ran away from the Baobab in fear, she felt drawn to it. The stories of curses and spirits had never frightened her, but the pull she felt toward the tree was something she couldn't explain. Taking a deep breath, she stood up and walked toward it. The night was cool, the grass damp beneath her bare feet. Each step brought her closer to the tree, her heart pounding harder with anticipation. The glow became brighter, illuminating the hollow of the trunk. Zuba hesitated. She reached out a trembling hand and placed it against the rough bark. A sudden chill ran up her spine. The moment her fingers touched the tree, a whisper echoed in her ears. "Zuba!" She gasped and jerked her hand away. The glow faded instantly, and the night grew eerily silent. She spun around, expecting to see someone standing behind her, but the village was still. Had she imagined it? Her breath came fast and uneven as she turned back to the tree. A breeze rustled the leaves, carrying a scent she couldn't quite place. Something earthy and old, like rain-soaked soil mixed with something unfamiliar. Then, as quickly as it came, the strange moment passed. The tree stood still, dark and quiet. Zuba shook her head and ran back to her hut, her heart still hammering in her chest. As she lay on her sleeping mat, she stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. The tree had whispered her name. It knew her. What did it mean? Before she could make sense of it, sleep claimed her. The next morning, when she awoke, something was different. A strange tingling sensation burned on her arm. She sat up and pulled back her sleeve, her eyes widening in shock. There on her skin was a mark, shaped like the roots of a tree. The morning sun streamed through the small window of the hut, casting golden rays across Zuba's sleeping mat. She sat up quickly, her heart pounding as she stared at the strange mark on her arm. It looked like the twisted roots of a tree, dark against her smooth brown skin. She rubbed it, hoping it was just dirt, but it did not fade. A chill ran through her. What had happened last night? "Zuba, wake up." Mama Asha's voice called from outside. Zuba quickly pulled down her sleeve, covering the mark. She didn't know why, but she felt a deep urge to keep it hidden. She stepped out of the hut, trying to act normal. The village was already alive with the sounds of people preparing for the day. Women carrying baskets of maize, men sharpening tools, children running barefoot through the dusty paths. Mama Asha, her grandmother, was sitting on a low stool, grinding herbs in a wooden bowl. Her wrinkled hands moved with practiced ease, her sharp eyes watching Zuba closely. "You were restless last night," Mama Asha said without looking up. "Did something happen?" Zuba hesitated. Should she tell her about the glowing tree? About the whisper that called her name? About the strange mark? "No, grandmother," she said softly. "I just had trouble sleeping." Mama Asha hummed in response, but she did not press further. Instead, she set down the bowl and motioned for Zuba to sit. "Child, there is something I must tell you," she said, her voice serious. "Something about our family. About you." Zuba's stomach twisted. Did her grandmother know? Mama Asha sighed. "Long ago, before even I was born, our ancestors were great healers. They were known across many lands for their power to cure sickness and speak with spirits. But one of them, a woman named Nyoka, was betrayed." "Betrayed?" Zuba asked, leaning in. Mama Asha nodded. "She had a gift, greater than any healer before her. But the people of the village feared her power. They believed she was dangerous, that she could control the spirits instead of simply speaking to them. Zuba frowned. But wasn't she helping people? Yes, Mama Asha said, her face darkening. But fear makes people do terrible things. One night, the villagers accused Nyoka of cursing a child who had fallen ill. They dragged her to the great Baobab tree and tied her there. Before they could burn her, she called upon the spirits for justice. Zuba swallowed. What happened? The spirits answered. Mama Asha said. A great wind swept through the village, and Nyoka disappeared into the tree. But before she vanished, she placed a curse. She swore that one day, her bloodline would return and reclaim her power. Zuba's breath caught in her throat. Her bloodline. She slowly pulled back her sleeve, revealing the mark on her arm. Mama Asha gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The mark, she whispered. What does it mean, grandmother? Zuba asked, her voice shaking. Mama Asha's eyes filled with both fear and awe. It means, child, that the spirits have chosen you. A cold shiver ran down Zuba's spine. She had always felt different from the other villagers, but now she knew why. She was Nyoka's descendant, and the Baobab tree was calling her. Zuba's mind swirled with questions. She could barely focus as she sat across from Mama Asha, staring at the dark mark on her arm. The spirits had chosen her? Chosen her for what? What am I supposed to do, grandmother? Zuba whispered. Mama Asha's face was grave. The curse that Nyoka placed on the village still lingers. The Baobab tree is not just a tree, child. It is a gate, a prison holding her spirit and the truth she left behind. You must uncover it. Zuba's heart pounded. But how? Mama Asha sighed and stood, reaching for a small, dusty wooden box tucked away in the corner of the hut. She opened it carefully, revealing an old, rolled-up scroll tied with a red string. She handed it to Zuba. This was passed down in our family for generations. It is said that only the chosen one can read its words. Zuba took the scroll with trembling hands and untied the string. The paper was brittle, its edges yellowed with age. Slowly, she unrolled it, expecting to see strange symbols or unreadable markings. But to her shock, the words were clear. The path to truth is hidden in the forest, beyond the river of whispers and the mountain of shadows. Seek the wisdom of the forgotten. Only then shall the curse be broken. Zuba read the words aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. Mama Asha nodded solemnly. You must go, child. The spirits will guide you. Fear curled in Zuba's stomach. Leave the village? Cross a river of whispers? Climb a mountain of shadows? She was just a girl. How was she supposed to do any of that? As if sensing her fear, Mama Asha placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You are stronger than you know, Zuba, and you will not go alone. At that moment, a voice came from outside the hut. Zuba! She turned to see Django, her childhood friend, standing in the doorway. He was tall for his age, with dark skin and curious eyes that always seemed to hold mischief. He looked between her and Mama Asha, his brows furrowed. What's going on? He asked. Zuba hesitated, but Mama Asha answered for her. She must leave the village on a great journey. Django's eyes widened. Leave? But why? Zuba exhaled slowly and showed him the mark on her arm. I think I meant to break the curse of the Baobab tree. Django's mouth opened slightly, then closed. He stared at her, then at the scroll in her hand. Finally, he straightened his shoulders. Then I'm coming with you. Zuba blinked. Django, this isn't a game. I know, he said, crossing his arms. That's why you need me. You can't go out there alone. Mama Asha studied him for a moment, then nodded. Very well, but take this. She handed them each a small leather pouch. Inside is a charm for protection. Do not lose it. Zuba tied it around her waist, feeling a new weight settle in her chest, not just from the pouch, but from the responsibility placed upon her. She was leaving everything she had ever known, and she had no idea what awaited her beyond the village. Zuba and Django left the village at dawn, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink. The weight of the journey pressed on Zuba's shoulders, but she refused to show her fear. With Mama Asha's warning echoing in her mind, she clutched a leather pouch tied around her waist and followed the path leading into the dense forest. Django walked beside her, his machete strapped to his back. "So," he said, breaking the silence, "this river whispers. What exactly are we dealing with?" Zuba shook her head. "I don't know. The scroll only mentioned its name." Django sighed. "Great. So we're walking straight into something we don't understand." Zuba didn't answer. Her thoughts were consumed by the strange events that had led her here. The mark on her arm, the whispering tree, and the feeling that something greater than herself was guiding her steps. Hours passed as they navigated through the forest, the thick canopy blocking most of the sunlight. Birds chirped in the distance, and the rustling of leaves suggested hidden creatures watching them. Then, suddenly, the air grew colder. Zuba stopped. "Do you feel that?" Django frowned. "Yeah, it's like the air just changed." Ahead of them, the trees opened to reveal a wide river. The water was unnaturally still, reflecting the dark clouds that had gathered above them. A deep, eerie silence settled over the area. No birds, no wind, just the water, waiting. Then the whispers began, soft at first, like the wind through leaves, then louder, surrounding them. "Zuba," she gasped. The voices were calling her name. Django grabbed her arm. "We should turn back." "No," Zuba whispered, shaking her head. "We have to cross." She stepped closer to the river's edge. The whispers grew more insistent. "Come closer. Step into the water." Zuba clenched her fists. These voices weren't real. They were trying to trick her. She closed her eyes and remembered something Mama Asha had told her as a child. When spirits call, do not answer. When they whisper, do not listen. When they demand, speak the words of the ancestors. Taking a deep breath, she placed her hand over the leather pouch at her waist and spoke firmly. "I walk with the spirits of my ancestors. Your voices hold no power over me." The whispers turned into sharp hisses. The river began to ripple violently. Django stepped beside her, drawing his machete. "What's happening?" Zuba swallowed hard. "The spirits are testing us." Then, as if angered by her defiance, the river roared to life. Water rose into the air, forming ghostly shapes, shadowy figures with hollow eyes. They reached for her, their arms stretching unnaturally. "Run!" Zuba shouted. She grabbed Django's hand, and they sprinted toward the narrow wooden bridge that stretched across the river. The spirits shrieked, their watery bodies crashing toward them. Django reached the bridge first and pulled Zuba after him. The wood creaked beneath their weight. The spirits lashed at them, but the charms around their waist glowed, repelling the attacks. Panting, they ran until they reached the other side. The moment their feet touched solid ground, the whispers stopped. Zuba turned back, her chest heaving. The river was calm again, as if nothing had happened. Django wiped his forehead. "That was the scariest thing I've ever seen." Zuba nodded, gripping the charm. "But we made it." They had passed the first trial, but the worst was yet to come. The journey beyond the river whispers was silent, but the tension between Zuba and Django was thick. Neither of them spoke as they walked through the dense forest, the memory of the ghostly figures still fresh in their minds. The air was heavier now, and Zuba could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching them. Ahead, the trees thinned, revealing the towering silhouette of the mountain of shadows. It loomed over them, its peak disappearing into thick, swirling mist. The path leading up the mountain was steep, and jagged rocks jutted out like sharp teeth. Django exhaled. "Tell me we don't have to climb that." Zuba tightened her grip on her pouch. "The scroll said we must seek the wisdom of the forgotten. That means we go up." Django groaned but nodded. "Fine, but if I fall and break something, I expect you to carry me." Zuba smirked. "You'd slow me down." Despite the tension, the joke eased a tight knot in her stomach. With a deep breath, she led the way up the rocky path. As they climbed, the mist thickened, wrapping around them like a living thing. Soon, they could barely see a few steps ahead. Django coughed. "This fog is unnatural. It's like it's trying to..." He stopped suddenly. Zuba turned. Django? His eyes were wide, staring into the fog. I see my mother. Zuba frowned. Your mother? Django took a shaky step forward. She's calling me. She's alive. His voice broke. She didn't die. Zuba grabbed his arm. Django, your mother passed away years ago. No. He yanked away from her grip, his eyes filled with desperation. She's right there. Can't you see her? Zuba turned in the direction he was pointing, but all she saw was the swirling mist. Then a voice echoed from within the fog. Zuba, she froze. It was her father's voice. Her father, who had vanished when she was a child. Her breath quickened. What if he was here? What if he hadn't abandoned her? The fog shifted, and suddenly, she saw a familiar figure standing just beyond the mist. Baba, she whispered. Her father's voice was warm, filled with love. Come to me, my child. Her feet moved before she could think. But just as she took a step forward, something cold brushed her skin. The charm. A sharp pain shot through her wrist, snapping her out of trance. She gasped and stumbled back. The mist swirled, and suddenly, she saw the truth. The figure wasn't her father. It was a shadowy creature, its face distorted, stretching toward her like a hungry beast. It was an illusion, a trap. Django, she shouted. Django was almost completely lost in the mist. Zuba lunged, grabbing his arm and shaking him hard. Django, wake up. It's not real. He blinked, confusion clouding his eyes. What? The fog. It's playing tricks on us. Django looked back at where his mother had been, but now he saw what Zuba saw, a shadowy creature, reaching for him with clawed fingers. His face paled. We need to move. Now!
What do you think will happen in the next part of this enchanting story? Tell us in the comments. If you are a first-timer on this channel, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks.